Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host Tony Cañas, switching to my radio voice and realizing my hair is just an insane mess today. Uh, and today I have with me Margaret Spence, founder of the Inclusion Learning Lab. Margaret, thank you for joining me today. How's it going?
Well, Tony, thank you for inviting me. It is going great. Day before Thanksgiving. Thinking about turkey and thinking about marketing and thinking about all the things I have left to do, but it's all good.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much for making time to join me today. And according to LinkedIn, you are Florida, right? West Palm Beach.
Yeah. I'm in West
So
Palm Beach, Florida.
late November, probably quite nice. Probably not super hot anymore, but still like super nice.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, we have had about 2 weeks of heavy rain, and we had a tropical system come through last week, which was really weird. Um, so I ended up Sunday in my yard cutting down tree tops because we had this tropical system, and it sort of went through not what we expected, but there's a couple thousand people still without power here, which I don't
Oh
think
wow!
it made the national news, but we had a late November tropical system.
Well, that's not great. I'm glad it didn't get any worse. Crazy that this far, like we're a month out of hurricane season, just about.
Yeah.
So this is really really late. Okay. Um, so we always give the guest a chance to give the elevator pitch. What is the Inclusion Learning Lab?
Yeah. So the Inclusion Learning Lab is an online immersive community based learning platform that is designed for talent leaders. And our goal is to make sure that together we can create an inclusive future for everyone. That is our entire goal. We want to drive transformative change inside of organizations. We want to create collaboration and innovation and results. But on top of that, the diversity and inclusion role and the diversity and inclusion function is the one that is at most jeopardy in every organization, right? It's the role that has a lot of turnover on it. 90% of DEI leaders are gone in 9 months. This is before we ever had any issues. Most feel frustrated in the role, most are trying to figure it out. Organizations, while they want inclusion, they don't necessarily want everything. So we are there to do two things. We function to support the DEI leader themselves and the role of the DEI function. And we also serve to create training and engagement around inclusive leadership. How does the organization build the next generation of leaders who are inclusive? And how do we get the current generation of leaders to be more inclusive about the next generation coming into our industry? So that's the gist of what we do.
Okay, um, 90%. So I
90.
had heard that the departments or the roles had high turnover. I had no idea it was that high. I would have guessed it was 90% 5 years, not 9 months. Um,
9 months.
so is it generally uh, frustration that it's generally like they leave? O-
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
much more often than they're shown the door.
yeah. They will leave. You'll find that one of the things that we've been tracking, we go on to LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and we have a informal way of tracking. So we will put in and we will track the diversity and inclusion role, and we will look to see who's in the role across the board, who identifies in their profile as DEI, and then we will look to see how they change because LinkedIn will ping us that somebody has changed roles. And one of the things that we've been tracking is how many DEI leaders who start out in diversity and inclusion at that job title, when they leave that job title, do they go back to another role with the same title? And what we have found is that 60 to 70% do not. So if you're already in the role right now, and they feel that this role is not what they thought it was going to be and they leave it, they generally don't come back to that role. They go on to something else. So even inside of our community, we have about 250 people in our community. And inside of our community, over the last year, half of our members have left the DEI role completely and gone on to non DEI roles. They've gone back into HR roles or they've gone into business function roles. And the other half of our leaders are probably at risk to leave in any short amount of time. So, what we try to do is functionally help that leader create their own personal wellness around the role. What we find is that people in the job title will become what we call wounded healers, meaning they'll be a wounded healer. They're trying to heal the organization from its non inclusive lens. And they become so wounded by that process that they end up leaving the role and going on to something else. We also find that a lot of HR individuals, people in talent acquisition, talent development, and HR, business partners, business leaders, they are now becoming the functional DEI leader at the same time. While they always had responsibility for the function, if the DEI leader leaves, now they become the functional DEI leader for the organization. And in many places, they are the DEI leader, like they've made it a dual role, be HR, be DEI, and they're struggling as well to try to figure out how do we create this pathway. Within the insurance industry, we are technically at full employment. So we have like a 1.2%, 1.1% unemployment rate, which means we are technically fully employed. What I say to organizations is if we are fully employed as an industry, that means all the good people are working. That 1% that's still left unemployed is probably people you don't want to hire, right? Because they bounced around all over the place and people have said, this is not my great person. So if we have a diverse universe around us and we are not creating diversity inside of the insurance industry, we're missing an opportunity to build the future together more inclusively.
Yes, the very low unemployment rate within insurance has been the case the entire time I've been around, and I joined the industry in 09. It increased during the 2020 to about 3%, and then it came right back down. And even with the recent layoffs, you're not incorrect. Insurance professionals who want a job have a job. They might get downsized. They might take a few months to find the next one, but yeah, there's no uh, army of experienced insurance talent uh, waiting for the right opportunity. Uh, you, you really have to attract them to your organization with a great company culture, especially in the remote first era.
Right.
Where there's a lot less friction in changing companies and generationally, millennials, and I'm an elder millennial myself, 40 years old, and especially Gen Zers really care. Right, the DEI is not a side characteristic to the two newer generations. We demand it, and we will choose to work with the companies that get it right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in insurance, are we doing worse than most industries? I mean, it kind of feels like it, but are we doing worse than most industries when it comes to the AI?
I think we are. I think there's a handful of companies that are um, doing work, right? It may be what I call window dressing work, and it may be award winning window dressing work, right? So you have a lot of them will win the
What
big
winning
award.
dressing?
So we have award winning window dressing. Okay. And we've committed award winning window dressing. And we have super committed programs that may or may not produce the results because the leaders who are driving those programs are too scared to rock the boat and say what needs to be said to their CEOs. So they do this performative functional DEI, but they don't hold anybody accountable for results around inclusion. So if you think about it, for example, the question that I ask organizations all the time is, um, what does the marketplace that you're going after look like? The US marketplace is not the marketplace that was there 40 years ago when I joined the industry. Okay, I've been in the industry 40 years. I can actually say that now, right? And it's not the same place that I started 40 years ago. 40 years ago, this was an industry that allowed somebody to come out of high school, get a license, grow through the process, become this great organizational leader. But we made those people leaders, even though we never trained them to be leaders, right? We made them managers of market groups because they were great sales reps. But we never taught them the people side of leadership. So you find that what happens in our industry is people stay because they like the organization's benefits, they like what's there. But the light bulb has been turned off on that person a long time ago because the leader, their direct leader, is a functional person who is not inclusive. And so what we end up finding in our industry is a lot of the same old guards being replaced by people who look exactly like them. And we will say we have diversity. Sure, the insurance industry is one of the most diverse industries out there because it's the one place that you can have an agency, you can have a brokerage house, you can have a book of business, you can have all kinds of things. Okay. Our market landscape is changing. Our market landscape is becoming more diverse in terms of the Hispanic market, right? Our employee base is not becoming more diverse in terms of the Hispanic employees. And if we have Hispanic employees inside of our marketplace, they're there for what I call translation purposes. We have a Hispanic,
That's where I started.
um, we have an Hispanic customer. They need somebody to tell us what we need, and that's their whole purpose. It's not a career track where we put people on and we're moving them to where they're actually making money in our industry. This is the big part, Tony, that drives me intensely crazy. There's two sides of the insurance industry. There's the cost center side and there is the profit center side. Okay. On the cost center side, you have claims people, you have policy servicing, you have, junior underwriters, and so on and so forth. Those people get an hourly pay. We can terminate them at will. We can do anything we want with those folks. On the profit center side of the house, it's mostly white male, right? On that side of the house. That's where if you want to terminate John whomever, right? You have to call up accounting and say, how much money do we have to pay this person to leave? What is the exit amount of money we have to pay them? Diversity is not on the profit center side of the house. Diversity is on the cost center side of the house, right? And so the financial engine that drives our industry is not diverse. It's not even woman centric. So when we talk about diversity, we're not talking black and white. We're talking women, people of color, in any category you want to put somebody in. That's not the original old guard that runs this industry.
That is super super interesting. I I had never thought of it that way. I had never thought of the fact so yes, we at this point, well over 60% of the industry employees are women,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't see them as much in the leadership, and you definitely don't see them as much in the production side, right?
Right.
There's many like a lot less agency principals or even producers that are women or people of color. But I had never quite put it that way. That yes, we are diverse, but
Mm-hmm.
it's it's really the cost center
Right.
that
Right.
is diverse. And yes, the cost center is much less protected, has much less influence.
Right. Yeah. Less influence, less outcome base. And what happens now inside of the diversity function in our industry is that the DEI leaders try to fix oh, we need more people of color, more women, blah, blah, blah. But they're not looking at where are our current employees sitting in this pipeline? Are we bringing people in totally in the cost center side of the house, right? And in the cost center side of the house, it's a career cul-de-sac. If you don't go over to the business side of the house, you're in a career cul-de-sac. You can become a manager, a supervisor manager, a director, or a leader, but you're still leading a cost center. You're not where you can control your financial growth. It's even more evident when you get over. During the pandemic, I got exposed to insurtech, and I did a bunch of programs with the insurtech side of the house. And I attended a bunch of the insurtech conferences virtually during the pandemic. And what was happening there is there was a lot of women founders, but the women founders weren't being funded. What was being funded were all of these male founders. And then there was this sudden one company, one woman out of Miami. She had a jewelry insurance product that she came out with, and the insurtechs threw like, $2 million at her or $3 million at her. But at the same time, they had funded Lemonade at 100 or $200 million, right? So when you look at where our dollars are being spent in this industry, it's not being spent in the places that it should be spent. Fast forward, Maxine Waters, during the pandemic, commissioned a report in her committee before the House switched over, and she asked the insurance industry to tell them how much vendor dollars were going to diverse people and women. So, okay, so we often think about the industry as the front loading, the employees, but I think of the industry more holistically in its entirety. Okay, how many vendors on the claim side of the house are diverse in women? Well, what it turned out to be was less than 1%. Less than 1% of the premium gain dollar was being spent back in services to women and people of color. So you're talking about billions and billions of dollars that is taken in, that is now spent on investigation services, or spent on claims dollar, or spent in doctor's office or lawyer's offices, and so on and so forth. The majority of that money isn't going to women, and it's not going to people of color either. So when you evaluate this industry, you have to say to yourself, do we continue to have this diversity conversation around how do we hire more people of color, or do we dismantle the industry in its entirety, shine a light on the whole thing? Because if I'm the DEI leader and my only focus is on how do I bring more people in the door, and I don't focus on where money is being spent going out the door, where money is being spent coming in the door, meaning our customer base that we're selling coverages to, going out the vendor base, and then also saying, if we're investing in technology, which a lot of the big ones are we investing in women and people of color technology companies? No, we're not. So that's why I said it's all window dressing. There's no substance to it. It's a bunch of window dressing.
It feels that we've been doing a lot of education, but education only gets us so far. How do we move from education to accountability?
Right. Accountability starts in the CEO desk, right? A lot of CEOs signed off to the CEO pledge during George Floyd's murder, and they said, oh, we're going to do all this stuff. And then the reality is they never followed through because nobody held the CEO accountable. So it comes down to shareholder accountability, because we got to go all the way back. We can't even stop at the CEO anymore. We got to go to shareholder and board accountability, where the board and the investors hold the CEO accountable for making sure that diversity is infused inside of the entire ecosystem of the industry. Who are we selling to? Who are we buying from? And who are we employing? And who are we serving in the community? Right? And that question is how we create accountability. And if we look at that and we say, if we want to be a viable industry into the next 100 years, what do we need to do to make sure that that viability exists, right? What is it? Because we can't keep doing things the way that we've been doing them.
Okay, you did say you are working with some companies that give you hope, or that seem to be doing the work.
Yeah, absolutely. We work with companies who, I hate to be negative, right? I hate to be negative Margaret, right? So, and I try very hard to not be negative Margaret. What we decided, my team and I have decided that we cannot cut this big, gigantic sequoia tree down all at once, right? What can we do inside of organizations? And so, if the organization appetite is to work with talent, then that's where we're going to work. We're going to try to help them build effective talent pipelines. And so there are very great organizations that we work with, some of the big tens that are very focused in on creating internal opportunities for their employees that's driven by retention of talent. Like if we hire someone, we want to make sure they stay here, right? And then we have other clients who are absolutely connecting the retention of talent with a system of customer improvement, with a system of growing their marketplace simultaneously, right? And some of them are doing it by deploying employee resource groups and diversity councils that are able to give them the lay of the land of the marketplace. And they're doing that. We have other clients who are um, creating accountability within business units where they're saying to the business unit leader, their CEO has said to the business unit leader, you're being held accountable for this. Your pay is tied to this. You must do this. This is not a nice to have. What we say to those clients is diversity and inclusion is not an add on to the job, it is the job, right? Being inclusive in a multi generational, multi ethnic, multi understanding employment environment is what we need. We need young folks coming in and they will do this. They'll, we have clients who will say, we're going to target or focus on getting next generation into the industry. They're going to look at the 20 something year olds and they'll deploy a huge product there. But then your 40, 50 year olds look at that and say, well, what about me? You've never done that for me, right? So we try to make sure that the organizations we work with have a holistic interdisciplinary view of diversity and inclusion. And there are quite a few who are getting that right, right? And we will work with clients who just want to do the band aid fix. Because what we end up doing with the band aid fix, and this is key for us, Tony, is when a company calls us and says, for example, we want a full DEI program, and we get in there and we try to roll out a full DEI program, and we realize we're getting a lot of resistance. We say, well, what is it that they really want us to do? Okay, they want us to set up an employee resource group. They want us to set that up so that it's functional and employees are able to benefit from this group activity. And then we set those up now strategic so that they drive the initiatives for the longer haul within the company, right? It is the gateway. So we basically say, what can we do? How far can we climb this ladder with the company? And there are lots of them who will let us climb the ladder with them.
Are the entirety of the services focused at the company level, or if I am an HR leader, or a even just a business unit leader that wants to help propel my company forward in this side, but I don't yet have management support. Do you also offer resources and courses for that group?
Absolutely. That ends up we are an interesting company because we end up with we would be a B2B company if you think of business to business company, right? But we end up being a B to C to B, right? So we end up getting a lot of individual contributors joining our community, taking our courses, getting continuing education, getting certified. And then they go back into their company and say, I did this program. This was really good. This is what I did. I think we should, bring this forward within the company, right? So we end up becoming a platform that serves individually and the two sides of what we do. And it's always a balancing act for us because we have the one side where we just have this learning community, but then we created a regular community. I just want to come in and learn from other people. I don't have budget for this. I have my own personal $100. I'm going to pay for a membership. I'm going to come in and I'm going to just commune with other people doing the work of DEI. And maybe I'll decide I want to invest in myself and take a course that's going to make me a better leader. So we have these inclusive leadership tracks that we will offer. And we get a lot of individual contributors coming into those programs, and then we'll get suddenly a call. That individual contributor will go to their HR leaders and say, I did this program, I think we should do it, right? So we try to support both sides of the house, where for us, the sales cycle with a organization is a lot longer than an individual. If an individual wants to take something to better themselves, we bring them in, we give them a full experience, and that's generally a catalyst for them to go back and say, I think we should do more. I think we should add to this. So we do a lot of that. It's interesting because I'll say to people, we're B to C to B, and they're like, nobody's B to C to B, but we are, because it's not, you always need a champion in house sometimes to champion what we're doing, and you champion it better if you've experienced it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, and I do have to say that the I'm looking at the website. The classes look much more. I'm trying to think of the word is interesting or engaging than a lot of what I've seen elsewhere. Right. So right now, cohort based DEI data
Mhm.
storytelling.
Right.
Uh, love the idea. A new DEI leader accelerator. DEI for an HR department of one. Uh, this
Mhm.
has insurance agency written all over
All
it,
over it.
basically, right?
Yep.
So fantastic. Power of equality, building her future resume, managing DI for impact, power of allyship. Uh, yeah, this is not DI 101. It's much more
Yeah.
interesting stuff. So really, 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 really liking that. And it looks like a lot of them are cohort based. How do the
Mhm.
cohorts work?
Yeah. So what we try to do is put together a cohort at a minimum of 5 people, and we bring them in, and everything is hands-on. So our purpose is to run a program. For example, the DEI data storytelling. We have a cohort going right now with 7 people in the cohort. Inside of that cohort, they're actually working on their own data. So they are working simultaneously. We're helping them build better stories with their talent data, because what we find is um, we use a process where we use a change management process inside of the DEI, right, work that we do, because it's not diversity and inclusion that we're doing. We're actually doing change management. We're trying to get an organization to change what they're doing now. And so what we find is we've built courses that help that leader do change management. So the first part of it is data storytelling. If we have data, talent data sitting, it's warehoused in spreadsheets, right? If we can't tell the data, tell the story about the individual, we tell the numbers, right? We tell the numbers. We have 25 women, we have 35 people of color, we have blah, 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 right? That doesn't tell my story. That doesn't make anybody engage with me. But if I say, we have 5 students who graduated from this particular college who came into an internship program with us, who we later hired, who are now account managers in the organization, and they've been here for 3 years, and you can show that on a graph and tell a story with it. Now you have moved from the head to the heart, right? And so everything we do is to take people from the head to the heart. If I know my story, if I could say I'm a first time college student, I'm the first member of my family to graduate, and I came into the insurance industry, and my goal is to do XYZ. And by the way, as the HR leader or the talent development leader, I think we should design a program to capture this kind of individual in our organization. Now I have a different conversation with my CEO, with my leaders. What we tend to do is go with, we have 200 young people here and they all want stuff. Right? They all want stuff. They don't want to wait. They want things quickly. That's not quite true. They don't want things quickly. They want things more organized and more specific and more targeted to them. So the question is, how do we find out what they want? And then how do we tell the story of what they want to the organization? So the organization moves out of the narrative that they've already built about this particular type of person and create a different narrative. And then we can build programs to impact that narrative, right? I'll give you an example. Let me give you a good example. We were working with one of the large brokerage houses, one of the what I call acquirer roll-ups, right? And we said to them, you're acquiring agencies at a rapid pace, but it doesn't appear that you're acquiring any agencies that are squarely woman-owned, right? So how do we go out and find a woman-owned agency that we could acquire? Well, they started looking, and none of them had the EBITDA numbers and they didn't have the financial numbers. So we said, let's create a co-branded marketing product where if a small woman-owned agency doesn't have markets to place better business, because that's how they grow, they have markets. If we allow them to access our market and they continue to own the book, right? But they're accessing our market, and we give them back an equal share commission, meaning they get 60%, we get 40. We're still making money for really doing nothing because they're going to have to service the account and everything else. We create an E&O product that covers everybody on every side. And we start going out and finding women-owned businesses, women-owned agencies that don't have access to the market, but need access to the market. And our goal as a roll-up is in 5 years, if we can build a block of these women-owned agencies, give them market, teach them how to sell a commercial product and a consumer product, right? And we give them that, and they build a $5 million book of business. We could actually buy that agency from them and make that woman a millionaire by selling her agency in 5 years, right? That's a DEI strategy. That's a DEI strategy, right? That's not just thinking inside of a box. That is saying to an organization, you are acquiring, but there's a whole marketplace that's missing in the middle that doesn't get touched. It's a small Hispanic agency, the small woman-owned agency, the small black agency. It's the small agencies that only know how to sell homeowners and auto, but they would make way more money if they could sell small commercial. But they will never get access to the small commercial market because they don't have a book. So they can't go to the big 10 and say, I want to start selling your product. I don't have a book. But if they sell the product to us, they refer the business into us and they get the commission back and they still own the business, right? It's a win-win.
That is super interesting. I never thought of do they not have access to the market, right? Like never occur to me that when you said they looked for women-owned agencies and none of them had the numbers, it didn't occur to me they just didn't have access to it. But I can totally see it. Yeah, they're not golfing with the right people, right? Right? They don't have those connections that are inherited, that are much easier
Right.
if you're a traditional 6 foot tall white male.
Right. And if you're a small woman-owned agency, let's say right here in West Palm Beach, Florida, right? And you're only writing homeowners insurance and home and auto, right? But one of those people who you're writing homeowners insurance for has a small landscaping business. you can't write that landscaping business. So that business in your book goes to somebody else because you don't have a market for a landscape business. So that customer is only buying homeowners and auto from you. You can't sell them on another product because you don't have another product to sell them. So, how do you ever grow as a small woman owned business if you don't have access to the market? So, for example, if I went to any of the big companies and I want to get access to the market, they say to you, you have to write $200,000 of business every year, and you have to have $1 million in commercial business already on your books before we give you access to the market. So the only way for them to get access to the market is to go to an MGA. They go to an MGA. Now they're not competitive. So if I'm the customer, I could go to a company that's a direct writer. The premium I'm getting is lower. If I go to the MGA, the premium is higher. So apples to apples, you lose the business because you don't have access to the market, right? The way to fix that and to empower a small woman-owned or a small minority-owned agency or a small veterans-owned agency, you could go all the way down. You don't have to go black and white. You could go a veteran-owned agency, right? The only way to empower that is to give them access to the market. And the only way to give them access to the market is for somebody to open their market and say, here's access. It's a chicken egg problem, right? And
Absolutely.
that's the reason why the woman-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned agencies don't grow. They can't grow. They can only write auto and homeowners, right? And in a state like Florida, where the homeowners market is garbage, you can't write anything, right? It's the difference between and so part of what our mission is economic stability, both for the employee and for the consumer out in the world, right? If I am a diverse individual or a young person and I come into this industry and I'm tunneled into a job that doesn't give me financial access effectively, we may think that a 30-year career doesn't happen overnight. It almost does happen overnight. 30 years later, you're exiting the workforce having made 60% less than your counterpart, which means now you're retiring with less money, right? So, how do we stop that economic cycle, both internally and externally, in a marketplace that has millions of dollars in its ecosystem that can be distributed better if we were more targeted and more deliberate? And when I set up that program for the agency group that I set it up for, I never said diversity in anything I said. I never said this is a diversity program. It's not. It's a program to capture a future revenue and a future acquisition strategy. It's a future acquisition strategy that just happens to be targeted to women, right?
Was it much easier to sell the leadership on the idea, wrapping it up in it's profitable in the long term, basically?
Yeah. So that's where I say we no longer do DEI work per se. What we do is change management and we help organizations to see the bigger picture. The only thing that this industry understands is money. Okay. That's the only thing this industry understands. It only understands money. And if we as leaders, whether you're in HR or you're in the financial side of this industry, if you're not speaking in terms of dollars and cents, you are missing an opportunity to shift the consciousness of the industry, right? So I often ask CEOs in particular, how much business are you losing because your workforce doesn't represent the consumer base that you're going after? We had a client that went out to a government bid. And when they went out to the government bid, the bid clearly said that they wanted a diverse opportunity created. They wanted a team that was very diverse to meet their employee needs because their employees were very diverse, right? And four white guys showed up to the meeting. But here's the part that was most shocking about this. The office that they worked in and that division and unit, the account executives, the claims manager, the market leaders in that whole division that those four guys led were all diverse. They were Hispanic, Black, Asian. They had every diversity underneath inside of their work product. So inside of their business unit, there was diversity. But they never thought to themselves, let me bring those people to the meeting to show what my team looks like. They still were caught up in, let me go because I'm the face of the company. But you're not the face of the company. You're the face of the sales process. The face of the company are the people that nobody sees, right? And because you don't see them as valued assets in your marketing cycle and in your sales cycle, you don't bring them to the right meetings. You bring your what you consider to be your A team to those meetings. And I've sat in those meetings where we've been shopping for brokerage for an organization or running an RFP for an organization. And we'll say we need, we want to see the full breadth of your service team. And they bring the four white guys. And I go, really? Okay, that's great. Who's actually doing the work? Oh, we left her back in the office. But that's who I'm going to be talking to every day. Why don't you think you need to bring her, and it's generally a her, to the table? Right? More and more of these companies are getting the drift. They're understanding it. But this was not so long ago. This was 2 years ago that this happened. So it didn't happen. It happened in 2023, right? So it didn't happen 2022. So it didn't happen like 5 years ago. This happened after we talked about what inclusive leadership was, after we had trained on it. They still had the mindset that they were the face of the sales process, and the people who serviced the account was not important enough to bring them into the sales process. So that's this systemic thing. And they lost the business. So we said to the CEO, how much business do you continue to lose because your sales leaders do not understand the importance of being inclusive? And inclusive there is including their entire team in the sales process, right? So it's granular and it's nuanced inside of the work that happens in insurance.
That is a fantastic lesson right there. Absolutely fantastic. Margaret, we're running out of time, but I want to make sure that I give you a chance to mention the podcast. So tell us about
Yes.
your podcast.
So my podcast is Inclusion Unscripted. We are live on LinkedIn and we've taken a hiatus. We will be back either in December or early January. And we are on live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and we broadcast at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Our focus is simply this: we're not building diversity and inclusion, we're living it every day. And if we're living it every day, then we do things to make sure that everything we do is inclusive in every part of our world, in every part of our life. And we challenge the dynamics that exist out there. And we're on all the podcast apps. You can download it, Inclusion Unscripted with Margaret Spence.
Yeah, and while you do it live, all 48 episodes are available on recorded on YouTube and the other platforms.
Yes,
Thank you so much for your time today. This has been fantastic, and I participate in a lot of the conversations, and this one really stood out. So thank you so much for your time today, and
yeah.
I hope that this spreads like wildfire. And clearly, you've already got significant reach with almost 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, and very excited to help further spread the message.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. And likewise, I would be happy to spread your podcast as well. I love what you're doing. So thank you for inviting me
Thank you.
today.